Hey everybody, Chris Anderson here with another episode of Coach Cran's Corner. Today I'm here with Jack Kiefer. How are you doing, Jack?
Good.
All right. So yeah, we had a pretty good weekend last weekend. I made top 8 of the Classic with the Blue-White Flash, the deck that we're going to be playing today, and you took the whole thing down. So
Yeah.
congratulations on your first Classic win.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
and yeah, we're going to play this deck today because we've got a Standard Open in Knoxville this weekend, and I'm actually really excited about that because I think that this deck is awesome, and I've been having a lot of fun playing it. So hopefully we can show all you guys at home the ins and outs of this new Standard powerhouse in Blue-White Flash. So yeah, basically it's kind of doing what all of the Blue-White Bant type decks have been doing in the past over the last year or so. You're going to see a lot of familiar cards. Thraben Inspector, Selfless Spirit, Reflector Mage, Gideon, Avacyn, Spell Queller, Copter. All these cards are like definitely not newcomers to constructed or to standard constructed. They've all definitely been proven, and it turns out when you put them all together, there's a lot of really great synergies, and they actually just work well together too. So
Yeah. But I think it's one of the most important part of it about this deck is that all these cards are so good, and they're all 4-ofs, which makes the deck really consistent.
yeah, everything's a 4-of basically. The only non-4-of is Revolutionary Rebuff, which isn't really something that we want multiples of all the time. Sometimes it's okay to have multiples, but other times, if your opponent gets a ton of land, then they can become invalidated. So it's good to not get too many of those. Another one of the great things about this deck is that Copter basically makes it so that if you've got too much of something, then you can just get rid of it. So we never really have mana problems with the deck, or at least we very rarely do, especially if we ever draw a Copter. It's really hard to get mana problems in those situations because you get to see 2 cards a turn.
Yes, Copter is very good.
So the list that we played the 75 cards this past weekend. We had just 2 Revolutionary Rebuffs and 1 Declaration in Stone. But we're going to go ahead and try a 3rd rebuff today because of how important the card rebuff is against Graph Widow in the green-black matchup, which is one of the most important matchups in the format, blue-white versus green-black.
Yeah, and it's also pretty good against the mirror too.
It is. There's just a lot of expensive cards that both decks have access to, Avacyn and Gideon most notably.
And just countering an Avacyn for 2 mana is a lot of mana advantage.
Yeah, spending 2 mana to get rid of their 5 mana thing is really great, especially when you can spend the other 3 mana that you have to play any number of our really great 3-drops. So yeah, that's basically the main deck is. Bunch of 4-ofs, really consistent, really powerful. And then moving on to the sideboard, we've got mostly a lot of 2-ofs, depending on what matchup we need them for. They're pretty flexible answers, and they let you do a lot of different things with your deck.
Yes, so we have a lot of counter spells, especially for the green-black matchup, because they have the Ishkanaz and important spells that we really need to counter. And we have the basic Fragmentize for the artifacts.
Yeah, Fragmentize is pretty good against both the aggro decks, like any of the vehicles decks. It's also really good in the mirror because it gets rid of enchantments too, so it can kill their stasis snares.
Yeah, so some of the most important cards in the mirror are Smuggler's Copter and Stasis Snare, which it kills both of.
Yeah, and doing it for just 1 mana. Yeah, that's really, really good. So you've got Blessed Alliance. That card's really great against basically any aggressive deck. Lets you gain some life, which there isn't very much life gain in Standard right now, so having access to it is pretty nice. Killing.
It's also especially good against Bristling Hydra.
The green-red energy deck. It's one of the best removal spells you can have against them. Doesn't matter if their creatures have hexproof or not. You still get to kill them. Declaration in Stone. That's another card that's just good quality removal. It does have the drawback of giving them card advantage. When you cast Declaration, after all the dust has settled and they've sacrificed the clues that they've gotten from the card, you are going to be down in card advantage. So that's not good, but it's also really efficient, and it can hit basically anything. and it can also hit multiple creatures at once, which is really strong.
Yes, that's very powerful.
So a lot of times, especially against decks where you are the aggro decks, I would say it's best against because it buys you time to stabilize, and if you get down to the late game, the power of your deck will overcome the fact that you are down a card because they get to crack the clue and recover their card for the creature that you killed. But their decks don't have the best reach in the world compared to what we can do in the late game. So it's a good trade-off considering how efficient that removal spell is. We've got a Woodland Ball, the Preserver. In the past weekend, we had 2, but oftentimes you don't really need the second one. And if you draw both against most decks, oftentimes you end up looting one of them away. And it's also kind of slow against the aggro decks, so it can be really, really strong, but other times it's a little bit clunky. But I think it's solid as a 1-of right now.
Yeah, it's definitely solid. Just the 5 life and 8 power of flying creatures is so good.
Definitely. 5 toughness is also just a good number of toughness to have. A lot of the removal spells can't get to 5
especially
toughness.
against like Avacins and
Yeah.
3/3 beats like Spell Quellers.
Right. Grasp of Darkness, Harness Lightning, Incendiary Flow, Galvanic Bombardment. All these cards they don't quite get to Limbala's size, so it's pretty good. Always Watching. That's something that I wanted to try. This is a new card for the deck. We'll see how good it is today. But one of the things with Gideon that I've noticed, a lot of times we just end up playing it and embleming it right away. And it ends up being good because having all of our creatures be slightly bigger than all of their creatures is really, really strong, especially in the mirror when we've all got the same kinds of cards. Always Watching gives us another way to do that without sacrificing the Gideon. And it also gives all of our creatures vigilance, which I think is going to be really good. It allows us to both attack and it basically allows us to dominate combat. We get to pressure with our 3/4 creatures instead of our 2/3s on our reflectors and our spell quellers. It turns our Smuggler's Copter into a 4/4, which is really good against their Smuggler's Copter. It also lets us block their Smuggler's Copter and attack with our own. So Smuggler's Copter can loot twice in one turn cycle, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about Avacyn is how it can attack and block. And Always Watching kind of like turns our Smuggler's Copters into Avacyns.
Yeah, it kind of does. It turns them into 4/4 flying vigilance. So
and Spell Quellers, kind of.
Most of our creatures in our deck aren't tokens. We do have the Gideon's Knight Allies, which are tokens. But if you turn Gideon into a creature, then it does get the bonus from Always Watching.
Yeah, it also just turns our 3B Inspectors into 2/3s, which makes them
really good blockers.
Much better than a 1/2.
Yeah. Our Selfless Spirits into 3/2 flyers, which is pretty good. It allows them to trade with Spell Quellers, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, 3 power
it
is
makes
great.
them immune to Liliana's activations.
Yeah.
So I think Always Watching is going to be a nice addition to the deck. I'm looking forward to seeing what it does.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, for the blue cards, we got the counter spells. Right now we're on 3 spell shrivels. In order to get the second Always Watching, we ended up cutting the Scatter to the Winds. We replaced one of the Scatter to the Winds with a with the Always Watching, and the other one we replaced with the third spell shrivel. I don't know whether or not the spell shrivel is just straight up better than the scatters or not, because it's technically not a hard counter. They could pay for it and prevent us from countering their thing, but paying 4 is really, really hard to do. Almost never. I've never had someone be able to pay for my spell shrivel. So just something that's like blue and 2 instead of blue, blue 1. And the exile effect is actually pretty nice. So I think we're going to try just spell shrivels for now and see how that works. It also allows you to play a Westvale Abbey if you'd like. We have not added a Westvale Abbey to our deck, but it's definitely something that you can do since you've got Gideons and Thraben Inspectors and extra creatures that sometimes the board can get clogged up. Also, sometimes you just want to use the ability to make token creatures. Since you'll not be tapping mana on your turn a lot, you'll hold mana up for counter spells or Avacins or something. If you don't want to play anything at the end of their turn, you could just activate your land and make a creature. So, finally, we've got Jace Unraveler of Secrets. This is a Planeswalker that really hasn't gotten very much hype over the last over its lifetime in Standard, really. But I think it's very good, actually. This is the first time I've gotten to play with it in Constructed, and I've been really impressed with it.
Yeah, what I really like about it is that it has a lot of loyalty.
Mhm.
So you can play it into a few creatures and still be able to like soak up some damage and draw some cards off of it.
You oftentimes will be able to just play it, plus it. It'll have 6 loyalty, and they can't kill it even if they wanted to. So they could get it down to like 2 or 3 or something, and then we just untap, use the ability to plus again, and then defend it, and it's good. Another really cool thing that we can do with it, something I didn't get to do it this weekend, but I did it last weekend in Baltimore. I had 5 mana, and my opponent had 5 mana. He passed the turn. I had a Thraben Inspector in play. I attacked him for 1 with Thraben Inspector, and then he flashed in Avacyn, predictably, and ate my Thraben Inspector. But I was okay with that, because post-combat, I just tapped my mana and played Jace, Unraveler of Secrets, bounced his Avacyn, and then passed the turn. So it was his turn. He didn't have anything on board, and all I had was a Jace. He can't really replay the Avacyn, because I could just bounce it again, and he's wasted 2 turns just getting my Jace down to 1 loyalty.
Yeah, it's really powerful because you can like use the ability twice without it dying. And yeah,
that was something that so this card is very similar in nature to Obnixilis.
Yes,
but Obnixilis you can only use the minus ability once, and then you have to use the plus twice before you can use the minus ability and keep it alive. With this one, you could just minus and you're fine, which is really great. Actually, it's something that I don't think a lot of people really realized. Just by looking at the 2 cards side by side, how effective that can be. So yeah, all the cards in the deck are great. The deck is great. I'm really excited to keep playing this. I'm excited to play some Standard again. So yeah, let's give it a whirl and see how we do.